Thank you for saving him. He is my grandfather.
The blood was dark against the bark. Not a scratch. Not a scrape. The kind of bleeding that meant something had already gone wrong before anyone noticed. Nyara Vale's fingers locked around the man's sleeve before her brain fully caught up with her body. He was heavy. Gray-bearded. His knees had already buckled once, and his eyes were tracking something that wasn't there, somewhere past her left shoulder, somewhere nobody else could see. The town car door was still open behind her. She could feel it. That rectangle of cool leather air. That exit. That future. Her phone screen lit up on the sidewalk where it had fallen, 9:07 a.m. glowing white against the concrete. Miss Vale. The regional director's voice was flat. Careful. The kind of flat that had been practiced. The meeting begins in 43 minutes. The old man's lips moved. Nothing came out. She tightened her grip. Hi viewers, have you ever been standing at the exact moment where one choice would change everything, and someone was watching to see which way you'd move? Welcome to King's Vault channel where beautiful stories are sidewalked and served. Tell us the country and city you are watching from. I believe some of you are tuning in from US, Canada, UK, Australia, Jamaica or South Africa. I want to connect with you all, stay with me as we continue. The director checked his watch. Not his phone. His watch. The gesture of a man who had already made his decision and was simply waiting for hers to confirm it. Nyara's heel shifted on the pavement. The man's hand found her wrist, weak, trembling, but deliberate. 9 seconds. That was all it took. And somewhere 2 blocks away, inside a building she had never entered, a personnel file with her name on it was already open on someone's screen. She was 7 years old the first time she understood that some people are invisible on purpose. Her mother, Celestine Vale, left for work at 10:47 p.m. every night, rubber-soled shoes, key fob clipped to her lanyard, a thermos of black coffee that she reused until the lid cracked. She cleaned medical offices. 4 buildings. 11 miles of hallway per shift. She was back before Nyara's alarm went off, always, without fail, sitting at the kitchen table reading something with a highlighter in her hand. North Camden Public Housing did not produce many people who made partner track at Virex Global. Nyara knew that. She had always known that. She had spent 12 years building a resume that moved her farther from that zip code with every line, not because she was ashamed, but because she understood exactly what exit velocity required. Corporate America had its own language. She learned it fast. Smile when interrupted. Agree when dismissed. Absorb when belittled. Treat each small erosion like it didn't cost you anything. Calder Rhodes was her direct supervisor. He was good at his job, in the way that a surgeon is good at leaving the smallest possible scar. You barely feel the cut until you're already bleeding. He never raised his voice. He never had to. You're impressive, he told her, 6 weeks into her placement. A slow look over the top of his glasses. For your background. 4 words. For your background. She filed them away, clean and quiet, the way her mother had taught her to handle things that were meant to diminish her, not by forgetting, but by remembering exactly. She was halfway into that town car because of everything those words cost her. And then she saw the old man fall. This was that moment. The blazer was ruined the second she knelt. Dark fabric, dry cleaned 2 days ago, pressed for the meeting, blood from the makeshift bandage soaked through the shoulder seam before she could reposition her grip. She didn't look down at it. She didn't have time. The old man's breathing was shallow but steady. His eyes focused, then slid away, then focused again. I don't want an ambulance, he said. Quiet. Firm. Remarkable, actually, for a man who couldn't hold his own weight. I know, Nyara said. We're not doing that. Her heel turned away from the town car. She heard the director behind her, not speaking, not yelling. Just the soft click of a stylus against a tablet screen. That sound was worse than shouting. That sound was documentation. She got the man into the back seat of her personal car, which she had parked half a block up because she had been early, because she was always early, because punctuality was another thing that had been weaponized against her when she was late and ignored when she wasn't. The old man whispered something as she buckled him in. She almost missed it. "They're always watching." She didn't ask what he meant. She called 311, requested a non-emergency wellness transport, gave the cross streets, and pulled into traffic. 3 days later, her email loaded at 6:14 a.m. One new message. Virex Global, Human Resources Division. Subject line. Update regarding your offer status. The language in the email was immaculate. Every sentence had been written by someone who understood that clarity was a liability. Nyara read it twice, slowly, the way her mother used to read fine print on lease renewals, not looking for what it said, but for what it was hiding between the words. Demonstrated lack of strategic alignment. She set her coffee down. Strategic alignment. That was how they described it. Not a moral failure. Not a personality conflict. A strategic one. As if compassion were a planning error. As if stopping for an injured man were a miscalculation in resource allocation. Calder would not have written that email himself. He was too careful for that. He would have sat across from an HR director with his hands folded and his voice measured and outlined what happened in a precise sequence that made her look like a liability and him look like a steward of the company's interests. She knew the performance. She had watched it delivered at other people's expense. Systems rarely punish cruelty. They punish disruption. She was the disruption. She had always been the disruption, from the moment she walked in with a resume that made 3 people in that office visibly uncomfortable, to the moment she chose a stranger over a car door. She replied to the email with one request. Not an appeal. Not a grievance. Not a letter from a lawyer. She asked for her full personnel file. 30 days of documentation. Every performance note. Every access timestamp. Every internal communication where her name appeared. Calder's assistant responded within the hour, confused but compliant. Nyara printed everything. Then she made a second folder and started filling that one too. He knocked twice. Unhurried. Nyara had been expecting a delivery. She opened the door with her lanyard still around her neck, laptop bag half-zipped, and Lucian Kessler was standing in her hallway looking considerably more upright than the last time she had seen him. The bandage was gone. His posture was different, straight, deliberate. He wore a plain gray jacket. No insignia. Nothing that announced itself. She stepped back. He came in without being asked a second time, which told her something. He didn't look at her furniture or her walls the way visitors usually did, the way people assessed an apartment to figure out what category to file the owner under. He looked at the stacks of paper on her table. He looked at the 2 folders. He looked at the notepad with its color-coded margin notes, and he stood there for a moment without saying anything. Then he crossed the room and sat down across from the table, not at it. "How are you sleeping?" he asked. "Fine," she said. "That's not what I asked." She sat down. "Why are you here?" "To see how you landed." He looked at the folders again. Then at her. "And to understand what kind of person you are when things stop going well." He asked her 3 questions over the next 20 minutes. Not about Virex. Not about Calder. About process. About how she made decisions under pressure. About what she believed organizations owed the people inside them. She answered honestly. All 3 times. Then he picked up the termination letter from the corner of the table. She hadn't offered it to him, hadn't mentioned it, and read it from top to bottom. His face didn't move. He set it down, smoothed the edge with one finger, and said nothing at all. The security footage had no sound. It didn't need any. The timestamp in the bottom left corner read 9:07 and 3 seconds a.m., and the angle was wide, a street-level camera mounted on a utility pole 2 buildings down from where it happened. The frame was clear enough to read the expression on a face. Clear enough to see exactly when a decision was made. 17 employees had been watched over the previous 8 months. Not monitored in the legal sense. Not surveilled with paperwork and HR clearance. Observed the way a person observes a room they are about to enter, carefully, without announcing themselves, looking for what the furniture tells you about who lives there. Lucian Kessler was not a retired man who wandered neighborhoods. He was the father of Dashiell Kessler, who controlled 61.4% of Virex Global's voting shares and had not attended a single public shareholder event in 4 years. Dashiell did not trust performance reviews. He did not trust quarterly assessments or 360-degree feedback surveys or any instrument that people could see coming and prepare for. He trusted character under pressure. 17 candidates. Senior track professionals. All of them capable on paper. Lucian had made contact with 9 of them in various forms: a stumble near a parking structure, a dropped bag on a subway platform, a man sitting alone on a bench looking lost outside a restaurant where a company dinner was being held. 16 people kept walking. 1 did not. The board memo was issued 4 days after that footage was reviewed. It had no subject line. It was 3 sentences long. The last sentence read, "Begin the correction." Calder Rhodes had no idea the memo existed. He was still writing his documentation of Nyara's disruption when the first audit request landed in his supervisor's inbox. He didn't see it coming, because he had never once considered that someone might be watching him the same way he had always watched everyone else. The conference room on the 31st floor had no windows facing the street. Calder noticed that for the first time when he was called in for what the calendar invite described as a routine governance review. He had attended 11 of these in 6 years. He had never once been nervous walking into one. He was nervous now. Something had shifted in the building's atmosphere over the past 3 weeks, small things, the kind that you couldn't report because you couldn't prove. His bonus approval was delayed without explanation. A project he had led for 2 quarters was quietly reassigned to a different team lead. An audit firm he had never heard of was seen in the compliance wing on a Tuesday morning with full access badges. He told himself it was restructuring. Companies restructured. It meant nothing. The door opened. Nyara Vale walked in first. She was wearing a dark blazer, no lanyard, no corporate badge. She set a single folder on the table and did not look at him. Behind her came a man Calder had seen once in a hallway photograph, Dashiell Kessler, casual, unhurried, the kind of quiet that filled a room without trying. And beside Dashiell, seated already at the head of the table, was Lucian. Calder's hand tightened around his pen. Dashiell didn't open with pleasantries. He looked at Nyara and asked, simply, "What would you change first?" She didn't hesitate. Not for half a second. She opened the folder, placed 3 pages on the table in a clean row, and began. Calder sat very still. His pen never moved. She had built the second folder over 19 days. Not in anger. Not in grief. With the kind of focus that comes when a person finally stops trying to survive a system and starts studying it like a structure they intend to redesign from the inside. Every policy inconsistency she had encountered at Virex, she had documented it. Date, language, department, the name of whoever delivered it. Every performance note in her file that contradicted an earlier one. Every instance where the stated standard and the applied standard were 2 different things depending on who was being measured. She had cross-referenced her file against the published employee handbook. She had noted every timestamp where an internal communication about her appeared within hours of a moment where she had pushed back on something, gently, professionally, correctly. She had understood the cost of what she was building before she finished building it. That was the part nobody in that conference room had expected. They had expected someone who stumbled into the truth. Someone who got lucky. Someone who needed to be rescued by the right connection at the right time. Dashiell looked at the 3 pages on the table for a long moment. Then he looked at her. "I want to offer you full reinstatement," he said. "Senior Compliance Director. Restructured reporting line. Effective immediately." The room was very quiet. Nyara picked up her folder, squared the edges against the table, and said, "No." That single word landed like something physical. Calder blinked. Dashiell's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did, something that looked, almost exactly, like respect. Nobody fired Calder Rhodes loudly. There was no confrontation. No boardroom moment with witnesses and cameras and a speech delivered across a long table. That was not how it worked, and Nyara had understood that from the beginning. Theater was for people who needed an audience. Precision was for people who needed results. His reassignment paperwork was processed on a Thursday. A lateral transfer to a compliance advisory role in a regional office, a position that carried the same title, a reduced scope, and no direct reports. His performance documentation, retroactively reviewed, now reflected 17 formal complaints spanning 9 years. 4 of them, previously closed as unsubstantiated, were reopened. His variable compensation for the current cycle was withheld pending the outcome of a governance audit. He sent Nyara an email on a Friday evening. Professional in tone. 6 sentences. He said he wanted to talk. He said he believed there had been a misunderstanding. He said he had always respected her capability. She read it once. She did not respond. A new ethics and accountability division was formed inside Virex within 6 weeks, 8 people, independent reporting structure, direct board access, named after no one. The compliance framework Nyara had outlined in those 3 pages became the operational foundation. Calder tried again. A voicemail this time. Then a LinkedIn message. Silence answered all of it. He had wanted noise. He had spent his entire career operating in the gap between what was documented and what was felt, that soft, unverifiable space where cruelty lived comfortably. Nyara closed that gap. Quietly. Completely. And then she walked out of it. She boarded the train on a Tuesday morning with 1 bag. Not because she had to. Because she chose to. There was a difference, and she knew exactly what it was. She had spent long enough living on the wrong side of it. The compliance consultancy she launched 3 months later operated out of a 2-room office in a city that had nothing to do with corporate Manhattan. No letterhead with a famous address. No partner track language on the website. Just a clear description of what she did. She helped organizations find the places where their stated values and their actual behavior had stopped matching, before someone got hurt by the distance between them. Her first 3 clients came through referrals she never asked for. The 4th was a mid-size firm whose HR director had been quietly watching the Virex restructuring from the outside and understood exactly what the story meant for companies that believed invisible systems stayed invisible. She didn't give interviews. She didn't post. 2 miles away, in a city she no longer lived in, Calder Rhodes was in a meeting nobody had called for him, explaining himself again, to people who were no longer impressed by his explanations. The train picked up speed. Outside the window, the platform disappeared. The city thinned. Open sky replaced the skyline, wide and unhurried, the kind of morning that doesn't ask you to prove anything. Nyara opened her notebook. Put her pen to the first clean page. She had work to do. Not revenge. Not a reckoning. Just the quiet, steady, unglamorous work of building something better than what had tried to break her. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for the room to finally let them in. Some people stop waiting. They build their own door, and they never look back at who's still shouting at the last one they walked through. Some people don't get revenge. They get free. And that is the full story of Nyara Vale, a woman who chose 9 seconds of humanity over a lifetime of performance, and in doing so, rewrote what power could look like when it belonged to the right person. If this story moved you, drop a comment below and tell us, what would you have done in that moment? Would you have gotten in the car, or would you have stopped? There is no wrong answer. But your answer says everything. If you believe in stories that remind us what integrity actually costs, and what it's worth, share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Every person you share it with is someone who carries it forward. And if you are new here, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. We release new stories every week, stories about real courage, quiet power, and the kind of people who change systems without ever raising their voice. You do not want to miss what is coming next. We will see you in the next one.